Fifth and sixth graders, today we are going to begin painting our Lawren Harris landscapes. We talked about the value, the lightness and darkness of a color, and how we can make a tint by adding white to a color. So the first thing you're going to do today, before you even start painting, is you're going to kind of map out where you're going to be putting your colors. So in the examples that we looked at, we're using the colors kind of purple, green, blue, and a brown. So I'm going to decide where I'm going to put those colors though. So my water here, my river coming into my lake is going to be blue. I like to kind of map it out, so I'm going to make myself a note since I have lots of different colors going on here. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to change it up from my other example I did. I want this to all be green. You could also make it brown. Maybe it's in more of like a dry desert type landscape. Up here with my mountains, since I'm doing these, this green, I think I like to keep my mountains purple. I could even just put like a P for purple, and then I kind of have these little hills here. Those are gonna be brown. I'm just gonna put a B, and then I'm gonna kind of have like a moon up here. So this little circle is gonna be white, but then these are going to be blue. So just kind of mapping it out for myself so I know where I'm going with it. Now we're gonna be doing lots of color mixing today, making lots of tints of colors. These are what my paint palettes looked like when I was done with my example. So we're gonna have a lot of fun making tints and mixing colors. By the back sink, there are 3 different sizes of brushes. So you might have some smaller areas, you might have some bigger areas. Remember, use a big brush for a big area and a small brush for a small area. Make the brush work for you. If none of those 3 brushes are what you need, you can come and ask me to help you find a different size brush. So let's start with our brown, because I want to show you kind of a little trick of what I did there. So in your paint palette, I'm going to give you some whites since we're going to be making lots of tints. I ended up using 2 paint palettes. You might use 2 paint palettes today too. You can share with a neighbor. So we want to be making tints of a color. We looked at how Lawren Harris had different value kind of in these sections of his landscape. So we want to do the same thing. So for one of my sections of brown, I could just use straight brown, but I kind of like mixing the colors a little bit. So I'm going to take a little bit of white and add it to my brown. Now this is where you can kind of see I added a little bit of white. Brown is a dark color. The darker the color, the more kind of like powerful it's going to be. It's lightening up a little bit because I do want it still to be dark, but I want it to be different than the color that just came out of the bottle of paint. You can see here, I'm taking a minute and I'm mixing it up, making sure that it's all together. I don't see any streaks or anything like that. My paintbrush is kind of globby. I would grab a paper towel, just wipe it off. You don't have to use water. I can just wipe that extra paint off, and then I have easier amount of paint that I can manage to use. Now you're going to need a messy mat today because we're painting right up to those edges, and I'm just doing my best to stay in that section with my brown. Now with the brown, you can also add a little bit of orange to make it like a little bit warmer. Also, you can see here, my Sharpie's kind of getting covered up, and that's okay because our very last step for this project, once our painting's dry, is going to be to redo our Sharpie lines so that they're nice and clean. So it's okay. Right now, they're just our guidelines. So I can use, I don't want to waste paint, so I'm going to use a little bit of orange that I had before. I can take some orange and add it to this brown that I made, and it's going to kind of warm it up a little bit and make it like a warmer brown. And it's going to change that color enough that I'm going to be able to see the difference. Once again, I'm mixing it all in, making sure I don't see any lines in there. Once again, I'm kind of trying to get all that extra paint off and wiping it off. And I actually might add a little bit of white too. So you can see today, a lot of your time is going to be mixing all these colors, but that's what's going to make our landscapes kind of different from each other. Even though we're using the same idea, we're being inspired by the same artist, we're mixing our own colors, so everyone's is going to be a little different. All right, you can see it gets messy, but do your best. I'm going to wipe that extra off, and then I can go and start painting in this other section. Now, if you go to paint in a section right next to one that you already did and you can't really see a difference in between the two tints that you have, that means you got to add something. You either got to make it lighter or darker. You should be able to see from section to section a difference in your colors, okay? So maybe it's kind of darker right here. I'm gonna use a little bit here. This is where Mrs. Beach should probably get a smaller paintbrush, but I'm trying to go fast for the sake of our video. All right, so I would go ahead and paint in my 2 brown ones. Now, I wanna show you one more example of things that you can mix in, some like different colors, and that's with the green. So the blue, I just used blue and white. Same for my purple. I just used purple and white to make my different tints. If you want to add a little blue to your purple, that might be a nice thing to do to kind of see how that looks. For my green, you can use your green with your white, just how it is. That's kind of there. I liked adding a little bit of yellow to my green, making a little bit more of almost like a springtime green. So once again, I'm gonna take some green, put it into my white here. I'm gonna make a big batch of this, we'll say, because I have a lot of this to cover. And then as I go, as you saw in my other paint palettes, you can even kind of move things around. Feel free to really experiment making these different tints. That's almost lighter than I want, so I'm gonna add a little bit more green over here. And then I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow too. I'm gonna have the paints up at the drive-thru today. If you need more colors or things, you can just come up and I'll help you get those. So once again, I'm taking a minute here, getting my color all mixed together. If not, your tint's gonna kind of change color as you're painting. All right, so I'm getting it so I can't see any green streaks or any yellow, kind of wiping it on that edge there to get the extra paint off. All right, I think I'm good. So wiping that extra paint off. I have pretty big sections here, so I'm gonna leave my paintbrush kind of globby because I can go right in here and start painting. So adding a little bit of yellow to your green is going to warm it up a little bit. If you don't want to do that, that's totally okay. Our white paint is acrylic paint. It's really thick, and that's going to help us when we're painting on our construction paper. If you're painting and your paintbrush is getting a little dry like this, or it doesn't feel like it's spreading, and you've added white, go ahead and get a little bit. I just did a tiny bit of water. I just dipped like the tippy tip of my brush, and I got a little bit of water, and that's going to help it spread a little bit easier. We are using construction paper, so be careful not to get your paper too wet, otherwise you risk tearing it. Once you've gotten all of your sections painted, you are going to leave it on your messy mat and carry it flat like a lunch tray and put it in the drying rack. I'm so excited to see how these landscapes turn out.